Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy that almost all of you are still there. So I have an interesting topic, yeah? I'm not so much talking about NILM in itself. I'm going to talk about a tool to make NILM easier for everyone. So what I'm proposing, and that's something that doesn't exist yet, but that's something that we're working on, is to build the Supermeter, and maybe someone later on is creative and comes up with a better name for it. And basically, we would like all of you, or as many of you as possible, to help us in this effort, because I think it will make everybody's work on this aggregation easier. So just a bit of background on my company, Discovergy. So we're almost 10 years old. Next year it will be 10 years. We're close to 70 people. We are full stack metering operators. So that means we do everything except manufacturing the meter so far, but we do the communications gateway. We take care of the installation. We do value-added services. So we provide you real-time feedback. And as Shubham showed this morning, we do a bit of work on this aggregation as well. And we do this for electricity, but also for other media, such as gas, water, heat, etc. So the problem we set out to solve, and I think it's the same for almost all of you in this room, we thought about what can we do to contribute to the problem of making this energy transition happen, helping in reducing global warming. And being a startup, we thought like tackling it through transparency, tackling it through smart meter would be a good way to do that. And fundamentally, there's two camps of people, two routes one can go in doing this, yeah? And I think all of you fall into either one camp or the other. So one of them is, and I'm sorry for everybody's logo I didn't include here. Yeah, I'm happy to do that in the next time I'll hold this presentation. So part of us is using off-the-shelf meters to collect data. And that allows us, usually at best, to have data at 1 second granularity, often 3-phase. We have power and voltage. Yeah, this is the left camp. And then there's the right camp of people who basically use clamp-on technology that has the benefit that you can capture data at much higher resolution, but it comes at the problem that it's not the meter itself, yeah? And in a way, we all still struggle, I think, as we experienced the last 2 days. Nobody really has cracked NILM so far. Yeah, and there's a reason, I think, for those challenges, because both approaches so far have their drawbacks, yeah? What's good about using smart meters, they're relatively cheap, they're available, they're trusted by utilities, but the drawback is, if you really want to make the most out of this aggregation, you really would like to have data at higher resolution. Yeah, and so the disadvantage is with 1 second resolution, you do not have access to things like reactive power, harmonics, transients, and so on. And if you are like a startup and want to do a quick pilot with a utility, then maybe working with smart meters is also a disadvantage, because you're in a regulated environment. You have to first get the buy-in of the utility. So it's a bit more tedious. It takes a bit more time. If you're in the other camp, your upside is you don't have an issue with resolution. You basically put in whatever chip, whatever hardware you want to get the resolution you want. You don't need to ask anybody for permission. Yeah, you can do everything you want as close to real time as you like. But your drawback really is you effectively double the cost, yeah, because the customer already paid for their smart meter or analog meter. You need to do 2 installations, yeah, from the customer perspective. You cannot usually do billing based on that additional hardware. And depending on where you are and how sophisticated you are, it's kind of also hard to install. Yeah, you don't always have the space for it in your fuse, in your meter cabinet and so on. So what we kind of propose is to bring those two things together, yeah, to try to have the best of both worlds. And we think that's actually possible. And so the mission of the Supermeter is to cheaply collect high-resolution data in real time with a meter that's certified, so that can be used also for billing purposes. And the base assumption is if we can do that well, then all the other things we want to do on top of that will be easier than they are today, because you really have all the data that you need to be able to do that. And the specs that we envision for the Supermeter is to be able to do high-resolution data in real time and do that on the meter side for less than 50 euros. So for less than 10 euros more than a standard digital meter costs today. We want to do this three-phase bidirectional. We want to do it in a range of at least 8 kilohertz, probably quite a bit more. And if you do it for current and voltage, you basically get, at that resolution, you get all the harmonics, transients, and all the other things you want to be able to derive. You get that for free. And what's critical to be able to merge those two use cases is it needs to be certified, yeah, so that you can actually use it for billing purposes as well. And why do we think that makes a lot of sense to do? So we've been a meter operator now for about 8 years, and we've always told utilities, like right from the start, we captured data at this 1 second resolution, and often utilities said, why the heck would you do that? Yeah, what's the point of collecting all this data? And if they have their typical SAP systems, they say, oh, we did the business case, this is unbelievably expensive, yeah? Like, we cannot handle all this data. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a lot of data. Like at 1 second resolution, you capture about 1 gigabyte per meter per year. And you all know how cheap hard drives are these days, yeah? So it's really not a cost factor. But the cost, in fact, is like the only thing that you'll probably have a very hard time to ever bring down is the cost of installation, yeah? So that's, you're kind of stuck with that cost of installation. The production cost of the hardware, of course, as you scale up, you get that lower. But in fact, I think it will always be around this figure, because I remember my computer today costs just as much as the first computer I had, I don't know, 25 years ago. It's just 100 or 500 or 1,000 times more powerful. So I think there's a budget that people want to spend, and you just put as much technology in the budget you have available. But this variable cost drivers, the cost of storage, the cost of CPU, the cost of transferring measurements, that's basically benefiting from Moore's law. So I think that's all heading down to zero. So we don't have to worry about it. And if we have to worry about it today, we have to worry about it half as much in a year or two. So why did we come up with this idea? And why do we think the time is good to do that now? That's partly because we did a government-funded research project with some of the people here in this room. So that's also the reason why we have this conference at this location today. So we did it with Fraunhofer, we did it with Innogy, we did it with Green Pocket, and we did it with a meter manufacturer, EasyMeter. And in this project, we basically tuned the existing meter to capture data at 8 kilohertz. And we've been doing this now since the beginning of this year. We have meters installed and have been capturing data ever since. So we do have some experience on how to work with this data, pre-process, and what we can do with this. But really, we also learned a lot of things of how not to do it, yeah? Because the way we did it, there's really not a path to get it down to 40 euros, yeah? So we need to use a slightly different approach. But in the process of doing this, I think we learned a lot of how we might do it to get into this cost range and really capture exactly the data we want in an efficient way, process it in an efficient way, and so on and so on. And yeah, basically from the past experience and from all the things that we're tackling, problems are always harder than they first seem. It's always more work. It always takes longer than you would like to. So I think as an industry as a whole, we are still all in the very, very early days. Like our market share in Germany is less than 1 in 1,000. Yeah, so we've got lots of room to grow. And I think the situation for most of us in the room is similar. So I think we all can greatly benefit from, yeah, collaborating in order to create a market that doesn't really exist yet. Yeah, I mean, we heard last year that all the utilities do pilots and do another pilot and yet another pilot, but nobody ever really ends up buying something in volume. So I think it makes sense to all pull our act together to get to, yeah, I mean, yesterday you kicked it off with working towards standardizing things. I think it's in everybody's interest to decouple the hardware from what then you do on the software side with it. And I think that will help us, yeah, create and grow the market. And basically, NILM is hard, yeah. So everything that you can share, yeah, where you can work together, makes everybody's life simpler. And I found this, which I found quite telling, yeah. So basically, I think that a lot of us also again and again reinvent the wheel. I mean, I've read so many papers, so many theses where like people in their PhD, they spend so much time collecting the data. And the most interesting part in the thesis to read is kind of the last 2 pages, which is about what I would have done if I had had more time. Yeah. So I think we have a good foundation now that it's not necessary anymore to start from scratch. Yeah. There's a lot of good infrastructure out there already. So we should make use of it. There's enough interesting problems that still need to be solved. Yeah. So do not try to solve the problems again that have been solved. And as a nice metaphor, I think we should all aim not to build a car like this, which is patchwork, but kind of work together to maybe do a car like this, yeah, where everything fits nicely together, yeah, that people actually want, yeah. I mean, nobody these days will pay a lot of money for that, yeah, but people might pay a lot of money for that. And last year, someone gave a very good keynote at the end of last year's NILM conference, saying like, you know, 10 years down, yeah, where the hell is my NILM solution? And I think if we, yeah, work a bit more together, standardize on some things, we have a fairly good chance that we finally make some breakthroughs in NILM, because I think I discussed with 1 or 2 of you last night that if you do not hurry up, yeah, in about 10 years' time, all the appliances will be IoT enabled, and then nobody needs disaggregation anymore. So we better hurry up, otherwise nobody needs what we're doing. And yeah, with this, I'd like to close, and happy for any questions about the Supermeter or anything else, in fact. Yeah.